It is October 10th, and we are happy to be able to join as an executive committee this evening. And I thank all of you for making the time on your calendar to attend tonight. Tonight, we have the opportunity to review our expense budget priorities and requests, and also to review our capital budget priorities and requests. And Josephine, thank you so much for sending everyone the information, and we can begin.
Okay, Jean, I put together a PowerPoint first just to give everyone an overview. And let's see. Okay, can everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay. So someone at the door. This is a little getting used to the second. Hi, Assemblyman. How are you? we're on both. Assemblyman Chang just joined us. Henry, can you just pick up that receiver and hang it up because the bell keeps ringing?
Okay.
Okay, everyone. So you have both screens available.
Just over there.
Yeah, either way. So here we are tonight to discuss our FY 2025 capital and expense priorities, our district needs statement before the executive committee. And just as an overview, the executive committee meets during the month of October before the October general board meeting. As district manager, I attend city budget consultations. The district office does outreach to community organizations. We do a big e-blast. We write to our community groups and agencies, and we solicit input to see if there are expense or capital items that we should be advocating for. I also take a look at New York City open data to take a look to see what service delivery trends are happening. And we review the capital and expense priority list of the prior year. And then we have a public hearing and a vote during the month of October. So as far as agency budget consultations, we learned, we always learn a lot from our agencies. The NYPD participated this year, and so I extrapolated some of the information that we advocate for. First is school crossing guards in the district. Currently, the authorized headcount in the 68th precinct is 32. That is less than in past years. We've had 34, we've had 35, but our authorized headcount is now 32, and there's a vacancy of 2 school crossing guards, meaning that we currently have a total of 30 in the 68th precinct, and we have 2 elementary schools that plan to open next year. So we've advocated in past years to increase our allotment to 40. Next, we review the uniform patrol strength of the 68th precinct. The NYPD provided data for the last 10 years of personnel within the 68th precinct. So we're currently at 143, which is a little less than we were last year, mainly due to attrition. As you know, the NYPD has been experiencing attrition rates that have been increasing in recent years. And it's been a top request in Community District 10 to advocate for additional uniform patrol strength. The Parks Department provided us with a list of current capital projects, which the Parks Committee actually went through at their Parks Committee, and will be reporting to the board at the October general board meeting. Tree pruning remains at a 7-year cycle. The need for gardeners and maintenance staff is something that we have historically advocated for. The Department of Sanitation, MLP, which is my favorite acronym as district manager, it's motorized litter personnel. And they're the unit within the Department of Sanitation that takes care of all of our streets along bridges and highways around Zyka Beach golf course, all of those, chronic, unfortunately, areas that we experience dumping of garbage. And that's the unit that we really rely upon to do street cleaning. The Department of Transportation have asked for continued support as we do for street and roadway maintenance. Their HICWA inspectors have seen a drop in the number of inspectors. Those are the DOT personnel that actually go out and respond to 311 calls when you have a pothole or a street cave-in, or if there's work being done in the street and there's a question about the permit, whether it's from a utility or etc. HICWA inspectors are the agency's representatives that go out to do those inspections. In FY 2020, there were 26, and in FY 24, we're down to 17. So advocating for that personnel is important. The Department of Environmental Protection, really we talked about sustainability needs. As we all know, there's been a high vacancy rate in terms of employment numbers at DEP. With continuing storms and surge, there's a lot of infrastructure needs that we've identified on our capital needs, including one of only 14 plants in the city of New York. We have one plant, the Owl's Head water plant, that services 5 community districts. And it was built in the 1950s, so it's up there in age, and there's a number of capital projects there that we advocate for. So something we also do this in preparation of our district needs statement and our capital list is that we take a look at what are some of the top service requests to 311, and I always find this data interesting. This year, I mean, I try to blow it up a little bit, make it a little bit larger, and you could see illegal parking remains the #1 complaint in District 10. In FY 22, there were about, I would say, 4,100 complaints, and that's up to now about 10,700 complaints filed this past fiscal year, July 1, 22 through June 30th of 23. Also, heat and hot water complaints, blocked driveway, noise, miscollection has been in the past, general construction and street conditions, which is a big concern, whether those are potholes or cave-ins, etc. So we've had those concerns. And so I'm trying to make this a little hard on this computer. But that's just a snapshot of some of the the top 10 issues in Community District 10 that we should, be aware of. That residents in the district do reach out, for service requests. I try not to call them complaints, but requests for service delivery. And let's see, the New York City Parks Department. So in the district office, we decided to look at this data because it seems like there's not a day that goes by that someone's not calling to have their tree pruned, or they've asked for a tree and it seems like it's taking forever to be planted, or they have a big stump in front of their homes that's not being removed. So we actually took a look at the data, and there are a lot of pending tree planting requests and many requests for pruning, which we have here, and pending overgrown tree branches. There are about 352 that were pending at the end of the last fiscal year, and I would say about 100 or so new tree planting requests, and largely in part that was due to a contract issue that the New York City Parks Department was going through. That seems to be resolved now, and planting has resumed, but we do see a backlog in tree planting and certainly tree pruning requests, which are still on a 7-year cycle. And we've had a lot of tree work that has been done in the district. We had from January, I mean, it's a long period of time that we took a look at. There were about 158 pending complaints for trees to be inspected that seem to be in poor condition. Trees leaning or uprooted, those complaints, a tree trunk split. So complaints about trees really is a big service request in CB10. We have many streets that have few or no trees. We had an intern this summer who went out and took some pictures on blocks that have pending tree requests just to take a look. We have lots of empty tree pits that are just waiting for new trees to be planted. And there's quite a bit of a backlog. Tree stumps There were 314 tree stumps are scheduled to be removed during the next fiscal year by June 30th, 2024. So that's a lot in the community district if you think about it, and we hope to have trees that will be able to replace those tree stumps. Community Board 10 has had fewer stump removals within the last 6 months compared to the rest of Brooklyn, but they are on a schedule to be done, so we expect that they will be taking place this fiscal year. Hopefully, we're not sure what budget cuts, but we're hoping. So park maintenance and safety requests. Each year we do hear from residents who would like to see their park restrooms open beyond 3 p.m. Many parents and children utilize the parks and enjoy having the comfort stations open for greater periods of time. Many parents also reached out to us over the summer to advocate for refurbishing comfort stations and restrooms. And rodent abatement continues to be a great concern. It was a little bit better in the beginning of the season, then kind of peaked, and now it's better. Mainly at Shore Road Park, at Narrows Botanic, and near the gazebo, as well as Owl's Head Park. And we did have complaints about Dyker Beach Park, but they were less in number than they were last year. Let's see, the police department. So complaint types, illegal parking. As I mentioned before that, should we see the 23 meetings? Probably not. These are calendar year, so we did it to the end of the calendar year. So you can see the difference between 21 and 22. Illegal parking complaints that are blocked sidewalks, blocked hydrants, double parking. We get a lot of service requests dealing with parking in the district. And also noise, residential, commercial, and noise from vehicles. That remains about, a little over, close to 4,000, 3,719. And abandoned vehicles, we're seeing a little bit of an uptick there in abandoned or derelict vehicles. In 22, you can see that number went up a bit from 554 to 601. So it's been pretty consistent. So as far as CB10, our expense priorities for school crossing guards continues, I would say, to be a pressing concern, and we should continue to advocate for. Commercial truck parking and storage, the need for additional NYPD tow trucks, booths, and a storage facility. I think we hear this at almost every community board meeting. And certainly we heard this when we did our outreach to the community. Is that, people want to see that we certainly advocate for those items. Let's see, the Department of Sanitation. Complaints about overflowing litter baskets continue to be a concern. Those numbers are going down since we've had additional supplemental services that have been actually supplemented by the city council member in the district who provides an additional basket pickups. So that's important, I think, to maintain, and even citywide, the Department of Sanitation certainly has been talking about maintaining the pickup of corner baskets, which is very important because they're notorious for, unfortunately, great amounts of misuse. And derelict vehicles also continues to be a demand on the Department of Sanitation. In 22, we had 470 derelict vehicles removed from Community Board 10. The Department of Transportation, street condition, we get lots of calls about potholes and cave-ins. They continue to be consistent in the 800s. Outdoor dining complaints relating to questions about sheds, and is a service request that will be changing next year because there are new rules that have been put out for outdoor dining. So all of these sheds are going to be coming down by next year, and a new system will be put into place. And streetlight conditions, lots of calls still that the service requests have remained about constant. We get, concerns about streetlights that are out. The Department of Health, notably complaint types, rodents, rats, and mouse sightings take the bulk of the calls. There's been an increase in rodent sightings since the pandemic, 84–85%. And I will say that, Department of Health has been very responsive to the district office on every location that we provide to them. Department for the Aging, CB10 has advocated for home delivered meals. Continued advocacy for home delivered meals. There's currently no waiting list at the Baylor Center, and 650 meals are delivered to homebound seniors within our boundaries each day. 650, which is a lot of meals. I mean, if you think about home, those meal prep. So in our district needs statement, our top 3 pressing trends in FY24 based on our capital and expense needs, as we recall last year, was infrastructure resiliency. There were increased community concerns about the increase of storm and cloudburst rain events and the capacity of our infrastructure. 10th Avenue Sewer Project was listed as our #1 capital priority in FY24. Plus, we had other locations, Colonial Road and Bay Ridge Parkway, and we had a lot more added to our list, and those locations continue to be a top priority. 10th Avenue was funded by council member. He was able to secure funding for the 10th Avenue project, I think $51 million from 10th Avenue from 77th Street to 86th Street. But we have lots of other locations, as you know, on the list. 2, parks and open space, because we have 16% of CB10 as parkland, and probably 65% of our capital list is related to park improvements. And quality of life, reflecting an increase in 311 quality of life concerns, including noise complaints, illegal parking of tractor trailers, rat sightings, seniors and residents were vocal about sidewalk and so many other issues. So those were identified as the 3 pressing trends during our last district needs statement. So I showed here on the slide to the right was the constant contact newsletter outreach that we shared on our newsletter. And we sent a similar letter to all the community organizations within Ward 10. And I'm happy to report we had a lot of feedback this year, which is always very helpful. So the first, and I'm going to go through them quickly and share with you, because I guess as we prepare to look at the old list, to look at some of the new requests. So the first is Leif Erikson Park between 4th and 6th Avenue. This request was made by the 5th Avenue bid. They are concerned that this stretch of Leif Erikson Park has been neglected for quite some time and could use essential improvements like enhanced lighting, address overgrown conditions, refurbish to ADA specifications, perimeter sidewalk pavers pose hazardous pedestrian conditions, rehabilitate the basketball court area, installation of a cooling station, rehabilitate the ball field. So we do have in our last year's capital priorities list, number 20, we listed Leif Erikson, this section of Leif Erikson Park, because Leif Erikson Park is vast. And number 26 was the comfort station, a full rehabilitation of the comfort station. And number 29 was a full refurbishment of the playground between 5th and 6th Avenue. So I guess when we get to this point on the capital list, we could review the other requests. The enhanced lighting would probably be discussed, during a scoping meeting. The refurbishment of the playground would be funded. Overgrown conditions, I think that's something that we can handle at the district office and ask the Parks Department to address those. And ADA specifications, all of our capital requests, we add a tagline that says, I feel like I'm not talking to everyone. ADA specifications. And the perimeter sidewalk is something that we're starting to see in a lot of our parks and playgrounds. Leif Erikson Park near Fort Hamilton Parkway, as you know, we had seniors visit us. They reached out to us again. The perimeter sidewalk around Upper Leif Erikson Park is in bad condition. Shore Road Park, portions of Dyker Beach Park, and now we have this request for the perimeter sidewalks around this portion of Leif Erikson Park between 4th and 6th Avenues. And the reason why the bid raised this issue is the park is within their bid boundaries. She included that in the email. The basketball court area, we can consider pulling that out, perhaps making that a separate request. And as I said, the ball field is mentioned in our current, that we're going to be updating tonight. Next, you see here a picture to the right is actually Upper Leif Erikson Park near Fort Hamilton Parkway. And if you take a look at the sidewalk and the picture that was submitted by the residents who brought this in, that sidewalk is in pretty bad condition. Lots of seniors use that sitting area there. And they came into the office and were pretty vocal about not being able to push their carts along the way, or some had walkers. And when it rains, as you can see in this photo, that section really ponds with lots of water. And it's very frustrating. It's been on our list for some time. And we had a few requests. It's currently capital priority number 12. We moved that up last year. But it continues to be something that's advocated for by the community. The next is a new request that we received following the terrible storm we had last week, to initiate a study to determine the feasibility of installing electric signage at the entrances of the Bell Parkway to alert motorists of flooding conditions. That was a new kind of request. I'm not familiar with that kind of signage, but I certainly think it's worth looking into. I don't know if it meets the threshold of capital, but it's something that we could certainly look into. This was a new request. Next request was accessibility at Shore Road Park. The new Shore Road Park perimeter sidewalk is currently number 9 on our capital priority list. And additionally, the resident who wrote to us asked that we make pedestrian ramps at all intersections along Shore Road Park. And when I looked on Google Earth, I didn't happen to drive out there today, but I was surprised. There really are not every corner has a ped ramp along Shore Road Park. And, she writes, make all Shore Road bus stops wheelchair accessible. The photo here, if you could see, maybe I can make it a little bit bigger. No, it's kind of hard, but this is a bus stop. And you could see there is a curb. There is no accessibility point because you have this green, nice space. And, I did call her to get a sense, and she said it's very difficult if you're a wheelchair user to get off the bus along Shore Road Park because of the inaccessibility of many of the bus stops. So that is a request that was made. The perimeter sidewalk around Shore Road Park is the Parks Department. Although it is still in the bus stop, any sidewalk work alongside the park would be designated to the New York City Parks Department. There are also inaccessible sidewalk pavers on the residential north side of 86th Street to 90th Street. That means that wheelchair users have to travel on the street on Shore Road with traffic because sidewalks on both sides of Shore Road are inaccessible. I think those portions, if they're city owned, we can certainly include and advocate for, but across the street, I'm not sure. We'll have to look into that. But I think, keeping the perimeter sidewalks along Shore Road Park is important. Next, we have lots of requests for high capacity sewers throughout the district, especially areas with recurring flooding like Colonial Road from Bay Ridge Parkway to 80th Street through to 92nd Street. And those are already on our, list. There was requests to support MLP street cleaning for our overpasses and pedestrian bridges. There were lots of emails that said we need Department of Sanitation to do more cleaning of our streets along our highways and overpasses. And that advocacy would be specific to the MLP unit. We got a request for more pickleball courts at JJ Carty Park and Leif Erikson Park. This pickleball phenomenon is something that, I don't know, I've never played pickleball, but it seems to be very popular.
I haven't done it yet.
And the 76th Street Step Street, which is owned by DOT, its green spaces are maintained by parks. Each year we get an email or two about this. We now have an active volunteer who sets up regular cleanup events there. And the drainage there is still in poor condition, the fencing, the steps. So it's on our list, but I wanted to share that we did get emails upon this outreach. The next, Owl's Head wastewater treatment, we had a few emails that are requesting odor control and modernization. Now, our environmental committee, I know Tracy's on the call, there are a number of capital projects that you know, are ongoing to modernize and improve the Owl's Head wastewater treatment facility. But the realities are we really do have an overburdened sewer conveyance system. I mean, we saw how much flooding that we had in neighboring areas. We had some ourselves, you know, in our routine locations. If you can see here in this, the yellow area is the Owl's Head sewer shed. And that's a very large geographic area, and all of the loads of wastewater travel from this part of Brooklyn, all that's in yellow, which is 5 community districts, to our Owl's Head sewage treatment facility for processing of wastewater. And certainly we know with recent growth and development, the added loads means there's more coming to us. So making sure that our plant is able to, is a priority of many residents, especially those who live in the immediate area. And certainly throughout the district, it's important need. It's currently number 15 on our capital priority list. So that sums up the new requests. Jane, are you ready? Do you have any questions? Or are you ready to go right into our list and we could get our pencils out and start going through?
Do any of our members have any questions?
I'm going to stop the share so I can see everyone.
I just want to add,
Yes. The Assemblyman has a question.
certainly the Leaf Erickson,
Yes,
towards the Fort Hamilton,
yes.
if we can't add is a higher bush or maybe some fencing for sound barrier. We got these early morning trainings, dancing and exercising. But one side of residents are hearing the noise of the amplified music. So the only solution I can think of, we can maybe add a pickleball with a fence and that will cut down reflecting music out or bush, higher bush.
Maybe, I think planting, yeah. Yeah, Parks Department doesn't usually build, you know, they have a set fencing requirement, but certainly maybe more planting.
More planting to absorb some of the sounds from the amplified music along the side of residential side on the 66,
67th Street.
Yes, 67. And the one that's the business doesn't matter, the business side, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So, I did spoke to the Parks Department regarding about Leaf Erickson. They have, the only thing that's scheduled that they're doing something about is a bike path. So that's something that's scheduled right now. But everything
Oh,
else.
the Greenway project, yes, our Parks Committee
Yeah.
reviewed that, yes.
But
And that's funded, right? But Leaf Erickson Upper Park is, the sidewalk has not been categorized for funding.
no, that's not yet. So
Yes,
I don't know if that's going to affect with the city budget cuts.
yeah, I don't know, right? Each year we advocate, we really work hard to advocate and we hope that they get funded, but some have been on our list, right? All for a pretty long time, but that doesn't mean we should stop advocating for sure.
But that's all I have. But thank you
Okay,
very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's share, go into our blue.
Josephine, may I ask, in reference to that with the Leif Erikson Park, I believe that you were specific in the description that it was from 4th Avenue through 6th Avenue. But as you know, the councilman has said, it continues then up to.
Yeah, we have different priority requests for different portions of.
Got it.
For different portions of Leif Erikson Park. Actually, lower by Ridge.
Thanks a bit.
Thank you. From Ridge to Third, I mean, as we go through the list, we'll see there are different sections of Leif Erikson Park that we've identified for capital improvements.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to take out my list and my pen. So our first request that was number 1 was assign capital funds for to address recurring sewer backups along 10th Avenue from 77th Street to 86th Street. And this was funded.
Right.
So the question becomes, we can take this from number 1 and make it continued support. which is what we've done because it's been funded but not completed yet. There is a category called continued support, CS. So we could keep it on the list, and we could change our number one designation this year.
Good.
Number two has been, so as you see on this sheet, just to remind or the new members, there are set fields in the computer system where we identify our priorities. And so they categorize by general requests, and then we give specific information. So the second item is initiate an immediate study of the Bell Parkway infrastructure to address possible undermining caused by breaches along nearby Shore Road Promenade and the bicycle path. The Bell Parkway is an important thoroughfare, and the study should commence to determine if current drainage infrastructure is in need of upgrades. So that's been our number two request, because as we all know, the Bell Parkway floods terribly during heavy rain events and easily.
But there is major construction going on there.
So there is construction by 17th Avenue, right, going on, and a little bit before, maybe by 14th Avenue.
I think coming off the
overpass.
Mhm.
isn't it coming off the Verrazano also?
Yes, that's part of the Verrazano.
Hmm.
One of the combined sewer outfalls, the CSOs,
Acronyms.
which is near the Bell Parkway, is being refurbished. There is money that's part of a Parks Department budget. But they're basically putting, and Dean has used this language before, a Band-Aid, a medium-sized Band-Aid. We need a lot more than just a Band-Aid, but there was an allocation of several $1 million to make repairs to that CSO. And the that infrastructure that feeds water off flows out of that CSO. I'm not an engineer, but this is as I understand it. But during Sandy, the wave action really damaged, and other coastal storms really damaged those CSOs. And it's something that the whole infrastructure feeds into the conveyance system that feeds out into it. And it's something is just not sufficient. I mean, granted, we're having heavier rain events that the system just can't handle. It wasn't designed to handle. There's lots of conversation about infrastructure improvements. So this is why that this we have as number two. So number three has been an engineering study of the Shore Road Promenade bicycle infrastructure to address serious havens threatening public safety. This study must include complete investigation adjacent to the combined sewer outfalls to determine the source of water breaches. Recurring havens pose an immediate safety risk to bicyclists and pedestrians. The engineering study needs to be to protect the vital waterfront. So $7.6 million was funded to do some paving repairs and some repairs to the CSO, but not necessarily a full study of all that's going on there. So I don't know if we want to move this up, keep this there. The next,
Can I ask a question?
yes,
What's the difference between 2 and 3?
2 is the Bell Parkway, specific to the Bell Parkway, which is different infrastructure than the bike path. Yeah. They're right next to each other, but years ago we used to have it in all one, but then we decided to separate it out, thinking that it would be less money, maybe that would tackle some pieces of it. So they have funded, the mayor's office and Councilman Brannan's office have funded the paving and the worst parts, the worst sections. And during the Parks Committee meeting, we also learned about that one outfall, they're gonna do a Band-Aid, but it's part and parcel. We're gonna keep having this problem if we don't, I guess, really get to the heart of, what's causing it. Is it this other CSOs that are nearby the pathway? Is it the infrastructure conveyance system? And that's the reason why we continue to. It's such a vital piece of our infrastructure, both the bike path, which is now going to become part of this larger Greenway connector project, as well as the Bell Parkway, which is right next to it, and we know gets very flooded. So that's why they were separated. Item number 4 has, last year, what we decided to do is to provide an all-in-one capital request for improvements to address sewage backups in residential homes that also experience flooding. Colonial Road between Bay Ridge Parkway to 92nd Street, Narrows Avenue from 71st Street to 92nd Street, 81st Street from 4th to 7th Avenues, Bay Ridge Parkway from Shore Road to 3rd Avenue, 70th Street from Shore Road to Narrows Avenue. So these areas continue to flood during heavy events, and also homeowners experiencing backups, terrible sewer backups. We did a survey during the 9,000 Shore Road review in the weeks following that review, and we heard from about 100 homeowners in and around Colonial Road in that section from Bay Ridge Parkway to 92nd Street about recurring sewer backups. Number 5, capital funds are needed to study recurring sewage backups into residential homes in Dyker Heights. So other areas that we had complaints about is 13th Avenue from Bay Ridge Avenue to 79th Street, 11th Avenue from 62nd Street to 72nd Street, 12th Avenue from Bay Ridge Avenue to 79th Street. And I think what I learned in the last process is that the agency response was further study is required by the agency. That's the very first thing that needs to happen, is that DEP needs to study these areas. So seeking funding for the study is the first step. And then once it is approved, then we can advocate for the actual funding of the project.
In that case, should we update number 4 to also say study? Or has it already been studied?
Yes. Thank you, Jack. We should change that to study as well.
Great.
Remember that? Okay. Moving on to number 5. There are 2 identified street locations in Dyker Heights that may be in need of trench restoration, capital improvement due to recurring street cave-ins and depressions. At Bay Ridge Avenue and 12th Avenue and 13th Avenue. I'm sorry, Bay Ridge Avenue at 12th Avenue as the intersection, and 13th Avenue between Bay Ridge Parkway and 76th Street. So you can see from the agency response that they kind of agree, but they don't have the money.
Can I
And
ask a question? I was just, for number 6, what is the request?
the request is a trench restoration. So what that
Okay.
is that the wood infrastructure that surrounds the sewer pipe is collapsing. So the street they fill it in, but it keeps collapsing. It really needs to be, excavated, new sheeting put in, and then the roadway put on top. It's called a trench restoration project.
Is there a way to just strengthen the language a little bit, that not, instead of that may be a need? I'm just trying to figure.
Oh, that's fine. We could just say that isn't.
Yeah, just to kind of strengthen it a little bit, because it's not quite clear what is being requested, to me anyway.
So that are in need. Are in need of. Or I think we can get rid of that or capital improvement. That's a term that's used by DOT due to recurrent street cave-in. So I'll make that correction. And I'll do the same we separated last year the Dyker Heights locations from the Bay Ridge location. There's one location in Bay Ridge, 87th Street between 3rd and 4th Avenue that we've had on our list as well. And that certainly has been identified as a street in need. So I'll make that change as well there too, Tracy, to clear it up. Okay. Let's see, number 8 was John Paul Jones Park pathway and benches. That's been funded, so we can move that to continued support. The number 9 with the restoration of Shore Road perimeter sidewalks to reconstruct those hex blocks along Shore Road in the following areas: Shore Road from 72nd Street to 84th Street and 86th Street to 97th Street. Do we want to add the curbs to this, the ped ramps on the corners, or should we make that something separate? Going back to that one request we had.
Can we clarify what this project has not been funded means if we were to attempt to add to this?
I'm sorry, Jack, you mean what has not been funded? Oh, so this request, yeah. So what the Parks Department's response is that funding has not been provided for this, meaning that they support it, but they rely on city council funding or mayoral funding to pay for the project or to get a contract let. So their response is essentially, it hasn't been funded. There's no money for it. That was their response to our request. Now, the one above it also said this project has not been funded, but we learned at our Parks Committee that in July, Councilman Brannan did allocate funds for this project. So this has been updated since the council's budget hearings this past summer.
I think if we're talking about in number 9, reconstructing and rehabilitating sidewalks, that we could also add language about pedestrian ramps and
Okay.
accessibility.
Okay, so we're gonna add accessibility, pedestrian
Yeah.
ramps, and
Yeah.
accessibility, to number 9.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear us all fine in here when we speak? Okay, good. Okay, so I'm gonna move down to number 10. So this is Leif Erikson Park lower, between 3rd Avenue and Ridge Boulevard. Here neighbors complained of the disrepair of the portion of the park, which has never been refurbished. There are currently 6 antique light poles, and many residents of the Bay Ridge Towers have complained about the crumbling pathways, overgrown conditions, and extremely poor lighting. The parkland is underutilized in an area that is in need of additional parkland. And last year, I recall, Henry, we had talked about when we were in executive committee that, upgrading this request and within the top 10 was important because this northern portion of the district really has little open space options. And there is so much potential for this area and such a great need. It's probably one of the more denser parts of Community District 10 that's really has, we've heard from residents advocating for improvements to green space. Okay, next is our 76th Street Step Street, and I love the response to this. Project has been completed. No, it was not completed. Please remove from future budget requests. They're so, I think DOT is so upset. We keep insisting that this cycle, I'm going to see if I can include photos, especially during rain events. And we have a wonderful volunteer, a community resident who has really taken up this area as her project. And she's had several cleanings, and I have been to some of them. And it is incredible how bags and bags of trash are removed. There are no plantings. There are native plantings there that are just growing. There are many overgrown trees that are really need to be addressed. And the debates continue between the Parks Department and the district office. The commissioner of the Brooklyn Parks has committed to taking care of this area, but I will share with you, when I was out there with the volunteers, it is really wide, it is used, and people, it's a unique piece of infrastructure, and the board certainly has an interesting history. We have 2 step streets. The 74th Street Step Street was made a green streets, which is taken care of. It was refurbished because of the underlying water infrastructure, and this one just continues. Residents, each year we get calls and requests. Lori, I'm sorry, you had your hand raised?
No, I was going to say something, but I think I had confused the 74th Street, Step Street history with the history of this one. So, because I felt like we were going round and round and round on this every year. But I think that was 74th Street, right? Because it had that huge water issue.
Yeah, so 76, right, 74th Street was completed, 76th Street. I mean, the fencing is just, it's rusted, it's not in good shape. There are steps that have been patched, you can see the patches. It needs a refurbishment, you know, even if it's just fencing and, you know, fixing the steps a little bit better, new, you know, railings, I think is important. And certainly the infrastructure is not adequate. It's just not, it really does flood during rain events. It's like a waterfall. That's pretty.
Does DOT know the difference between 74th and 76th Street?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's a small thing, but you never know.
They do.
Okay.
They do. It's even pulling teeth to get graffiti removed. It's
Really? I thought they had that little truck that goes around.
It's not funded this year, is it?
you know what?
The funding went out of it. The cleanup truck.
Yeah.
The cleanup,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no more funding.
Yeah, right, there's no more funding for it. Yeah,
Okay,
they
I
stopped it.
realized that.
Okay, so moving on to 12 is new perimeter sidewalk for Leaf Erickson Park by Fort Hamilton Parkway to 8th Avenue. 13 is McKinley Park repairs for the comfort station. And 14 is Narrows Botanic Gardens, and all volunteer organization requested the DEP establish an oyster garden alongside the shoreline adjacent to the Owl's Head treatment facility. We've written to DEP on this, we've made this request, and each year we get a response that further study by the agency if this request is needed. I think it's still a pretty cool request.
Should we change the language to ask for a study instead of?
Yes, Henry suggests we change the language to add for a study. Yes, that's a good.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yes.
Maybe just to get it on their plate.
So moving on to number 15. Community Board 10 advocates for additional capital improvement investments to modernize the Owl's Head wastewater treatment plant. Currently, this plant provides treatment for 120 million gallons of primarily residential wastewater per day. It's important that to residents that odors are kept under control and compliant with New York State's DEC consent order. And the agency response is this project is included in the 10-year plan. There's certainly a number of projects that we had DEP come and speak to us about, but with added growth and development, maybe just an overall, continuing to advocate, but I can see this as a future committee topic. Tracy, if DEP can come out to a meeting, which no one seems to want to come to night meetings anymore because of budget cuts. Okay,
Has DEP talked about how if this project was completed, this Owlhead project was completed, whether it would resolve a lot of the sewage overflow issues, in the top of our priority list?
Yeah, so there are different projects. I mean, some have to do with odor abatement, with the tanks, some of the residual tanks that years ago were not covered, which are now covered. There was a new building to store the residual materials that has been completed. There was some dock and some deck work that was also done to do a lot of the transporting from the residuals by boat. I think the actual processing equipment itself is always important to advocate for, that the agency continues this as a priority, especially with added growth and development and processing more water in the future, making sure that it's everything that needs to be modernized is really been the reason why we've maintained it on the list. Tracy, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just had a question of that 10-year plan. The last time they came in to speak with us, that several of the capital improvements had been put on pause, whether it was for COVID or contractual, I can't remember what the actual reasons were. Is there any way now that that project is pushed out so much farther that like to request a reevaluation, because this is no longer a 10-year plan, right?
You're right. So we should change the wording then, perhaps in this request.
Because it's taking so long, there's other issues that are not being addressed as well or need to be highlighted, I think.
Right. So maybe we could speak to that. Several of, capital projects earmarked for, modernization have been delayed.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. I will add that.
Could we jump back to number 12?
Okay, Henry would like us to jump back to 12.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Was this the same area that the assembly member was talking about adding plantings to drown out sound?
Yes.
Should we maybe recast this explanation to like a full redesign of that area of the park to address drainage issues and the underlying causes of what has destroyed the sidewalks and adding new plantings to drown out noise?
Okay. Does everyone hear Henry? Is everyone okay with that? Okay, I have thumbs up. Okay. Okay. So we'll go back to. Okay, we'll go back to 16. Here we are. New perimeter sidewalk around Dyke Beach Park / golf course. The sidewalk area is heavily utilized by pedestrians and cyclists as a form of recreational exercise. The perimeter sidewalk is hazardous, uneven in many areas, and should also be widened in certain sections for pedestrian safety. 17 is to rehabilitate the 3 remaining ball fields at Dyke Beach Park.
Sorry, can we just on 16? I think like we should be a little bit more specific around which sidewalk we're referencing with that, because that's a lot of sidewalk if we want them to build a new perimeter sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean the whole sidewalk is pretty bad.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Although, like, I think it might be better to identify like more specific areas in hopes of getting it funded.
Okay, so do you want us to just specify the streets?
I think that would help. I don't know. I don't really go down to that area that much. So if there are like complaints about like a very specific part of the perimeter, I think that'd be good to identify. Otherwise, it's just very broad.
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly spell out the perimeter: 86th Street, 14th Polly Place to 7th Avenue. It is a big.
All of it.
It's all of it. Yeah.
It's.
It is. I attended a budget hearing that Councilman Brannan hosted, participatory budgeting, and a large group, there's several people who were just saying so many people use it for exercise. There was actually even a vision to maybe make it like a track, around things. I think we, kind of realized that would be a huge project, but making it, refurbishing the sidewalk and even widening it in certain areas, especially by the VA hospital there.
There's plenty of space.
Especially where the trucks park.
Yeah.
Everybody's scared.
Right. Okay, I will add the location in just for clarity as well. Thank you, Jack. Okay. Let's see, we did the Dyke Beach Park. So 18 is a complete rehab of Shore Road Park Field and Field 4 at 95th Street. 19 is the complete rehabilitation of Shore Road Park Ball Field at 74th Street. Number 20 is Leif Erikson Park Ball Field at 67th Street and 6th Avenue. So this is, we received that request again from the 5th Avenue bid. The ball fields are in poor condition and well utilized by local leagues. Then 21, the tennis courts need to be refurbished, and here we had listed several locations, but Bay 8th Street was funded. We learned at our most recent Parks Committee meeting. So we also have here Leif Erikson Park and Shore Road Park. Local junior high schools and high schools utilize these tennis courts.
should we add something there about pickleball?
I think we
Yes,
should. Yeah, that's very relevant.
One,
pickleball.
are they in competition for space now? The pickleball courts and tennis courts?
I think if they were on, I think Parks Department, when they do a refurbishment, they figure out, what's the actual utilization and that
Okay.
they could put a pickleball one in, they put a pickleball like they did at Leif Erikson Park at 67th Street.
Okay,
They took 2 of the tennis courts and made them pickleball
okay.
courts. Yeah,
that's great.
so interesting. Okay. I didn't write it. Okay, so 22. So 22 is request to initiate a study of the combined sewer outfalls infrastructure along the Shore Road Promenade from the 69th Street Pier to Bay 8th Street to determine if upgrades are needed in the wake of Superstorm Sandy. Functionality of the CSO is critical to the maintenance of the Shore Road Promenade. So this was specific to a study within the CSOs. 23. New comfort station at Shore Road Park at 101st Street, including the demo of the existing building. We learned at the Parks Committee meeting that this demolition was funded. Not a new building, just a demolition, so we can remove that portion of the request. And that was several $1 million. I think it was 3 million for the
Yeah.
demolition.
Just for demolition? Just for
Just for
demolition. Because it's on a slope.
It's on the slope, very intricate, the removal.
Right over.
So 24, complete refurbishment of the comfort station at Shore Road Park at 79th Street. 25 is the refurbishment of the comfort station at JJ Party Park. These all came from last year. We had all the moms come, reached out to us for the condition of comfort stations in the district. 26 is the refurbishment of the comfort station at Millennium Playground in Leif Erikson Park. That's by 5th Avenue and 66th Street.
Sorry, just to take a quick pause here. On 23, like I feel like we should increase the priority of this one, especially if they're removing the comfort station without a replacement here. It feels
Okay.
different than the other ones, right?
Okay, is there consensus there?
Increase, move it up.
Move
in
it up a
priority.
little bit, move it up in priority.
What, for the demo?
For the,
It's-
for the rebuild, for the new
Okay.
comfort station, since the demolition was funded.
Okay, where do we put it?
Where could we put it? So we're gonna see a few of these deleted, right? So number 8. Number 8 and 1, so there's room to move up because 2 of the items were funded. Is there a space that do you feel it should be in the top 10? Do you feel it should be?
That feels a little high
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
feels so high, yeah.
Especially other projects that we can get.
As they go up, it will go up 1 or 2. Just from getting rid of those 2. So at this point, it will be up if everything moves up in order.
20 down, 20.
It'll be about 20 or 21.
Yeah, so leave it as is.
I think it's all right.
Yeah, leave it as is and then we'll finish, we'll move on.
Okay. Okay, and let's see. Where was I? Okay, that was good. Dyke Beach Park, comfort station at Bay 8th Street. 28 was funded. This is the complete refurbishment of Russell Peterson playground, including the handball and basketball courts. That was funded. We had that in our briefing.
Fully funded here, it
Yeah.
says partially. Oh, okay, great.
So it was partially funded before this recent budget hearings with the city council. So this was just funded.
Wonderful.
Let's see, 29. Complete refurbishment of Leif Erikson Park between 5th and 6th Avenues, including play equipment, water fountains, and infrastructure. And this was the new request from the 5th Avenue bid that had submitted this.
Shouldn't we combine that with the lower Leif Erikson Park request, like top 10. Let me try to find which one I mean.
Because they're a few avenues away and the Parks Department tends to focus on specific areas rather than a broad part of different sections of Leif Erikson that they work.
And it would be harder to fund.
Yeah.
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 The reason why we separated them out was so that they're smaller in amount and more likely to be funded, but that doesn't mean that we can't move it up.
That's fair.
if-
Yeah, I was just referencing priority number 10, just for the record.
Right, so lower Leif Erikson, third to Ridge is number 10.
You'll move it up to 8?
So was that a question for me?
No, so Sandy Vallis was saying, should we? So you're saying, Sandy, we should move third to Ridge up to 8 and then make 5th to 6 number 10? Is that what you were asking? Did I
Yeah,
understand?
being that we have the empty spot at 8, and at least they're closer in priorities.
Okay. So Sandy made a suggestion that we move Leif Erikson Park 5th to 6th up to number 8. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Thoughts?
I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, even if they improve one or the other, it kind of improves it. I know they're like a little further away, but even improving just one of them is helpful.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of funding, I guess, in the southern end, at the northern end.
Right.
That part, I mean, both locations have different needs for different groups, I would think. I know there was very to see from between Ridge and like the lower by the Bay Ridge Towers.
That's my
Oh, that's your
pet project.
okay.
So then 10 stays where it is. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Well, I mean, we have Tracy. Have you raised?
Yeah, I was just, and speaking of what currently is number 29, maybe expand it a little bit to include everything that the bid had highlighted as well. Because that's the same area, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because they seem to highlight a few more things.
Okay, so I'll add that to 29, and then so the question is, should 29 move up to either 8 or 10?
I mean, I personally agree with Jack that they should be closer together so that it's, it highlights the priority.
Okay, but
I feel like 20 and 29 are sort of describing opposite ends of the same block. And that maybe you could combine 20 and 29 and put them in number 8 for that.
okay, so Henry
Yeah, I could see
suggests combine 20 and 29. And then move them up to number 8.
I would just suggest that instead of 8, maybe number 9, because number 9 is with the adding pedestrian ramp accessibility and for the perimeter of that sidewalk, moving that to 8 and then have the others up to 9.
Okay,
If that's
Make that 9 10.
so making the shore road only number 8, and then Leif Erikson that combining those two to number 9. Got it. Okay. So that's pretty good. We had some new, do we want to plug in some of the new requests that weren't on our list? Like the DOT Bell Parkway flooding signage. I think was one of the new requests.
I personally think that's a great one to add in there. Because it's so dangerous when that floods, and if any type of forewarning would be great.
I'm assuming it's digital signage, like when you go over to the Verrazano Bridge, they have those signs.
Yeah.
So this could be used, flooding could be for accidents or any other road issues, construction, yes.
Okay. I'm just looking at so the other one was we added the corner ped ramps along Shore Road Park Making all Shore Road bus stops wheelchair accessible, should that be standing on its own? As a separate, or should that be part of the?
I think that should be part of I thought we talked about that earlier, right? There wasn't there another one around?
Perimeter sidewalk, you're right, I guess they have to be done together, so we can add that.
I have a question just to clarify to Josephine. When you were showing the picture along there with the greenway, is the strip of grass and greenery that's parks, but the actual cut-ins would be DOT? Like,
No, it would all be parks.
it would
the
all be
entire-
parks.
It will be parks.
Okay, I thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we'll add that there. Pickleball courts we did. The Step Street we did. Okay, so I think we covered everything. Okay, we're done. We're done with that. Any other changes that you'd like to make? If not, I'll fix these all up. We good?
I think there's just some other ones that needs to be removed, like priority 36 that's funded. And can we talk a little bit about 31? What does this Decker Beach Park path new ventures funded mean?
31, okay. Complete refurbishment of Dyke Beach Park Playground and 8th Street between Poly Place, Cropsey and Shore Parkway, including play equipment. So what was funded was Dyke Beach Park paths and new benches were funded, as well as a section of bleachers that were going to be removed. So portion of this was funded, but the the first phase was not, the handball court was not. So I will remove items that were funded, that Parks, I will confirm with Parks. They did a presentation just about a week or so ago to our Parks Committee, and leave the remaining.
Honestly, what this priority tells me is that like Parks is willing to fund part of your request, no matter whether you group into one or have 3 separate requests. It's just like they'll take pieces of it.
Right. So we put this last year into one request, as identified by the New York City Parks Department, and what they gave an estimate for each of the phases. Phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and we opted to put them all into one section, and pieces were funded within them. So you're saying that we should separate them out?
No, what I was saying is that it seems like from a Parks Department perspective, like they are willing and able to take pieces of a request as opposed to only ever look at it in conjunction. Because I was referencing the conversation that we had earlier around Leaf Erickson Park, whether we should combine the ones or keep them separate. Like, kind of doesn't matter to Parks, it seems like, because they will fund parts of it that is identified as important for them.
Right. Well, Parks Department doesn't always identify the needs that come from the community as part of their district needs capital assessment. So in this case, this was part of their because they are very interested and they've identified need. They actually provided dollar amounts to, am I understanding right? So they actually assign dollar amounts where they don't typically assign dollar amounts because it's kind of smaller items within the playground, which is, and within the park of Dyke Beach Park. I mean, we could separate them out. I think we decided to keep them whole last year because that was how it was presented to us as one last year.
Sometimes they'll chop it up.
Yeah.
Say there's funding for the benches or there's only funding for the paths.
Right. Well, just like they did this year, and it's Parks Department doesn't have a capital budget assigned to them. So they really are reliant upon council member funding or mayoral funding. So I think
Got it.
in their effort,
This
you
is more
know,
of a case of Justin saying like, I'll give you 5 million.
I'll give you,
Exactly.
right,
Not 15 million. and
Exactly.
Says this is the most
Right.
important thing that we need to do with that money.
so we could remove the portion that was funded and, you know, I'll just clarify with Parks what phase it is, you know, which of the phases, if that's okay.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Did we finish this? I don't think we did. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We got to 29 and then.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's long day. 30 was the rehabilitation of Shore Road Park at 79th Street. We just discussed 31. 32 is the complete refurbishment of Dyker Beach Park Playground at 14th Avenue and 86th Street. 33 is a request for native planting along the Shore Road Promenade adjacent to the Bell Parkway arterial highway area. This request was submitted by Narrows Botanic Gardens. The refurbishment of the terrain adjacent to the Bell Parkway currently now is grass and requires regular maintenance. And the proposal was that native plantings are beneficial to the ecosystem and attracting native insects, including butterflies, while significantly reducing the need for routine maintenance. So the agency response is this would require a larger expense budget. That's contrary to the community submission. So I don't know, do we want to leave this on? We did have a strong proposal last year about it. Do we want to continue to leave it on or?
I personally would like to keep it on. I mean, I-
Leave it there, doesn't hurt anything.
I think, okay, so
Yeah,
34,
agreed.
Comfort Station at Russell Peterson Playground. And 35 was a request for solar lighting for Shore Road Bike Path and Promenade submitted by Bay Ridge Cares. The promenade is used by thousands of people in the past. The thought of installing lighting along the path required electricity, and as we know, infrastructure was a problem. But with advances in solar lighting, we believe that this can now be accomplished. So I did send this over to Parks, and Parks' response was that lights are serviced by DOT. So I will change that to DOT.
Pass the buck.
Pass the buck. 36 was Dyker Beach Park, reconstruct Massimillo Memorial Basketball Courts. This was funded. 37, district-wide tree and sidewalk contract, the tree and sidewalk contract. This is when trees uproot sidewalks of 1 and 2 family homes. And this is a very popular request, and that requires a contract. That hasn't been funded. We haven't had one in a while in CB10, so that's why we added that to the list. 38, the Dyker grant of the Brooklyn Public Library. Capital funds were requested for exterior and interior renovation improvements. The Brooklyn Public Library supported this request, but needs money. 39 was a district-wide curb contract. And the this is a need. There are lots of broken curbs in the district. We get requests all the time, and it is the responsibility of the city. And I can't remember the last time we had a curb contract, so this is why we added it last year after outreach from residents on this.
Is this different from the curbs that they're doing? They're doing some work on curbs.
Yeah, so they're doing the corner, the ped ramps on the corners, so this would be different. This would be even a mid-block.
Okay.
Sometimes when DOT comes and mills and paves the street, curbs are broken and they just asphalt patch it up and walk away. So that's why. And there was such a thing at one time in New York City history as a curb contract. But there hasn't been in some time.
Okay, and that's what we're asking for.
That's what we're
here.
asking for there.
Okay.
Okay,
Could I just go back really quick to number 34?
okay, Henry would like to go back to 34, so I'm scrolling to 34. Yes,
Could we maybe move that up with all of the other,
comfort statements,
yes,
okay,
to like 28? or-
is that okay? Henry would like to move the Russell Peterson, comfort station with the other comfort stations to move it up. Okay, got thumbs up?
Good to me.
Okay, anyone else?
I'm sorry, I do want to ask about the trees because you mentioned it so many times tonight, and although that data was very interesting about where to go, the number 37. Would that be considered a higher priority, or are we, or in this case, we're it's not so much that is that we're requesting a contract that hasn't existed?
Yeah, so 37 is actually the replacement of the sidewalks next to trees.
Oh,
The tree planting budget, believe it or not, is not capital, it's expense,
oh,
interestingly.
okay. So this is the consequence of the
Yes,
tree roots, so this
yes.
is a separate.
Correct.
And it hasn't
Got
been
it.
funding for this in years.
Years,
Oh,
couple of years,
got it.
yeah.
Okay,
And you have to,
Requested
you have to score a certain rating. You have to score a 90, whatever,
Yeah,
how they
no.
figure it has to be a 90 or better.
Yeah.
Which means that the sidewalk has to be lifted considerably, to qualify for the program.
okay. Okay.
Are we all good, team? Anyone else? I'm gonna stop the share so I can see everyone. Is everyone good?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. Do we want to move ahead to expense? Now, our expense list pretty much stays the same each year, honestly. So we go through that pretty quickly. So I'll share my screen really quickly. So number one, and we're very local, community boards has always been our number one priority to make sure we maintain and enhance funding to community boards. Number two, increase patrol strength at the 68th precinct as well as civilian personnel levels. Number three is maintain personnel funding levels for firefighting and EMS staffing. Number four is the school crossing guards. This language will have to change to update the report that we received from the police department. Because right now the 68 precinct allotment, as we know, is only 32. It went down. I think we can still ask for an increase in allotment because of our new schools that are set to be open. And that need. Number five is support for increased funding for school safety officers. Number six, increase funding for home delivered meal capacity. So the number, we really don't have a waiting list. I can update that, but our senior population does continue to grow. So home delivered meals remains important. Number seven, this is Stephanie, right? This is including forestry services. Tree pruning, removal, and maintenance, including stump removal. Restored allocations for forestry's tree maintenance contracts are needed. It's important because we can't have deferred maintenance. We need maintenance of our trees.
Right.
Number eight is increased Department of Health staffing for rodent inspections and baiting. This is probably, continues to be a top priority as we're getting the rat situation, we've gotten good responses from Department of Health, but it is a problem, it continues to be a problem in the district. Number nine, CB10 has 0 gardeners to service the entire district's 352.5 acres of parkland. So we moved this up last year. Because how can we not advocate for gardeners in the district? Number 10, request to provide sufficient funding to maintain additional basket collection trucks in commercial corridors within CD10. The concern is with fiscal constraints and problems that are upcoming. Right now, we have an additional basket collection because of supplemental allotment from the councilman, but it's so important to have those baskets picked up frequently. Number 11, in building is for building inspectors. Inspectors are needed to address the growing number of illegal conversion complaints in both residential and commercial building. We may want to change that language to any building complaint at this point because building inspectors are just, just important. Number 12, increase funding to keep library branches open additional hours within the boundaries of Community District 10. Number 13 is CB10 has recurring problem of disposal of household waste, commercial waste, and this improper disposal occurs at many MLP locations, including overpasses, which we spoke about earlier, pedestrian bridges. DSNY enforcement is needed to address stoop line and sidewalk obstruction violations after hours on weekends. So this is really to advocate the Department of Sanitation personnel for MLP and for some of our chronic enforcement locations. 14 is increase personnel to keep park restrooms open beyond 3 p.m. 15 is reduce the mosquito population, funding for mosquito control areas of high mosquito concentration to curtail the spread of West Nile virus. We had only a few this year, sprayings, I think, in Board 10 because there's certain criteria. We had some around the perimeter, but we have had that request in years past. 16 is funds to support 6 playground associates who provide maintenance and recreational programs at McKinley Park, Baker Beach Park, Shore Road Park, and 79th Street Park, JJ Party Park, and Alice Head Skate Park, and Lee Bergson Park. 17 is increase PS, which is personnel services, to hire additional headcount maintenance operation staff to do road and abatement. And this is at the Parks Department. So Department of Health has road and abatement funding, and the Department of Parks has a completely separate from DOH unit that deals with rats. A little confusing, so that's why this question comes up each year. That's why we have it in 2 different places. One is Parks and one is Department of Health.
Should we move it up?
We could move that up. Henry suggests we move that up.
Agree with that.
Folks.
So, the rats together.
Yeah.
You want to keep the rats together? We can keep the rats.
Yeah, so we wound up with, is this the third one with the rats being mentioned, I believe?
Wait, so we're moving, which rats are coming first? The park rats or the just rats at large?
Where are the higher complaints?
I could tell you that the complaints.
Because, I mean, parks only goes after their own rats, I think, is that what we're saying here?
So perhaps we should do the residential rats. I mean, we have
Yeah.
probably, and many of you know this, at least 10 to 12 pretty bad locations in Ward 10 that health department is currently working on. And there's a number of reasons for that, but I would say we should do the general Department of Health first and then parks.
So that would be 8 and 9.
I mean,
So
I see them just, around the neighborhood more than I see them in the park. I'll just say that. Maybe because of garbage cans, but, I usually just see them walking less in the park.
I mean, we had some pretty graphic park stories too. I won't share with you, but because it's pretty horrible. But at the gazebo, I mean, we got a report back. They were like packs and packs of rats, like dogs chasing rats in certain sections of the park. Anyway, I did. So I agree with you, though, Lori. I think that the residential Department of Health, it's just a vaster area, and we do have a couple of locations. So 8 and 9. I think we could even move mosquitoes down.
Yeah.
Because mosquitoes really are a mosquito problem and plug it in there too.
Right, and definitely the needs of the residents, as you said.
Yes. So let me see. What number was health?
15.
Well, the mosquitoes are still really bad. It's been pretty warm and they're really out there.
Okay, so Department of Health was 8
For the rats.
for the rats.
Yeah.
The mosquitoes was,
It was 15.
so where do we want to put it?
Even lower down, because it gets knocked down once you move out. The Parks Department.
Yeah, I mean, if we moved up, if we moved it to number 9, then everything just drops down. We could do that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Mhm.
Do we have a request? I mean, I don't know if there is such a position, but is there just sort of rather than, I mean, I know we don't have a gardener in our parks. Is there just, some sort of line item just to get some sort of staffing at the parks level? Because, if there's no one there at all working, it just adds to the overall decline, like the overflowing of garbage cans and the overgrowing of, the grass and everything, and all of that lends to the rat problem. I'm just wondering, I know Parks response is usually we don't have funding, and that's,
Yeah, I mean, there is maintenance personnel, but they're not, they're assigned and they go through the community districts, through our district on a rotating basis. So say they'll get to do grass cutting at Shore Road Park maybe 3 times in the season. We can certainly advocate for more personnel. In the past, we've been specific to the gardeners because it's so important but we could do gardeners and maintenance staff even as part of number 9, we could add that language certainly, Lori, because I don't want to even lose that from the top 10. Maintenance services needed to,
yeah, I mean, it's just been the case for a very long time now that we just don't have people working in the parks, you see them coming on sort of like a rolling basis, but we actually used to have, an individual or 2, assigned to just our parks. They'd be there.
yeah, we
all the time,
have that in terms of programming and the comfort stations and the restrooms, but it's never enough, and that's why we have the separate item to expand beyond 3 p.m. We get that request a lot. But I would definitely add language to number 9 to say parks maintenance crews and staff in the district. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right.
Josephine,
Yes.
as on number 11, what worries me about the illegal home conversions is the new statement that the mayor has put out that he wants to make living space
Make
more
SROs.
available
Yeah.
for the migrants that are coming in. He specifically said that he wants to make basements legal now. And I'm just worried that some homeowners would take advantage, and instead of making more apartments available or space available for migrants, that the illegal home conversions are going to explode and go right through the roof.
Right. I mean, we could change this just to more general Department of Building personnel, not specific to one complaint type. Because you're right, the zoning for housing opportunity
It's going to change.
has proposed sweeping changes to our contextual districts that's gotten a lot of news coverage in creating bedrooms that don't have windows and SROs, communal spaces.
And I could see some people take advantage of that.
Yeah.
But even with the changes under economic opportunity,
Opportunity.
you need more DOB inspectors
Right.
and.
Okay.
Across.
So we'll change 11 instead of specific to illegal conversions, just additional Department of Building personnel for inspections. Is that okay with everyone? Okay.
Agreed.
Makes sense. I just want to note that priority 17, just going back to the previous point, around parks and personnel. The last sentence there says at least 10 additional maintenance personnel are needed within CB10. I know we're going to add that to, I think, like number 8, but just wanted to flag that. We might want to remove that sentence from there then.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Okay. Did we finish it? Okay, 18. Increase enforcement of canine waste laws. Frequent complaints are received by the district office regarding canine waste. It's a quality of life issue that frustrates residents. Concerns about street cleanliness. There is a separate unit in Department of Sanitation that just deals with this type of enforcement. Number 19, increase headcount to expand parks enforcement patrols and security services. Additional parks enforcement are needed to patrol numerous parks throughout the district. Vandalism, traffic violations, dog litter violations, barbecuing in non-designated areas, illegal vending, using permitted fields without a permit, that's a recurring issue, and related violations to parks regulation.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay, leave that. 20, 20 is murals and artwork to add public space. Recently, mural work at Russell Peterson Playground, the entrance to the American Veterans Memorial here beneath the overpass. Promise to deter graffiti and beautify the areas. We get complaints all the time to complete some of our overpasses with artwork.
Who's doing the mural at the old CB10 building?
I don't know who funded that. That's a good question.
It's huge. It takes up the whole building
Yeah,
and it
it must be funded
welcomes
by.
people to Bay Ridge.
Yeah. So it,
Yeah, it's a great spot for it.
that building needs work, but that's a whole other.
There's a lot of rats in it.
Its location. And then number 21, we added last year, provide funds for the newly created DCWP vending enforcement personnel. So that has changed yet again. And the Department of Sanitation is now the lead agency for vendor enforcement. And it is staffed, so we can delete this item.
What is vendor enforcement?
So vendor enforcement is when it's personnel needed to make sure that vendors who are selling wares on the street, whether they're food vendors or whether they are general merchandise vendors, are properly licensed, not blocking the sidewalk. We've had some areas, in the district in the past that have been problematic, 86th Street. Which is a no vendor area. We've had some food vending in different locations that were unlicensed. During diaper lights, there's lots of vendor activity, and that's a vendor-free zone. So that we require vendor enforcement to make sure that there's proper licensing for both consumer protection and sidewalk safety.
How does DSNY get that? I don't understand that.
Clean up the street.
So DPW is taking over a lot of different new responsibilities. I don't know what the decision, but it was made. It was first the police department.
Yeah.
And Department of Health for food. But both of those agencies really competed for services because they had so many other responsibilities. And then the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection exclusively did general vending. But they didn't have any enforcement officers, so people continued to complain about illegal vending, especially, community stores along the commercial corridors, blocking pedestrian entrances. That's, we have probably a smaller amount of illegal vending than some of our neighboring districts do. But Jack, that's the reason why we added it last year, is because.
But the vendors on 86th Street are okay?
No, the vendors on 86th Street, a lot of them are not licensed.
How about the two food trucks over there
The food truck,
by 86th Street, Fifth Avenue?
they both have licenses.
They have licenses.
Right. The question becomes, should they be on the sidewalk for the amount of hours they are? There's different competing rules, but it's been deemed if they're licensed and they have the pedestrian walkway, as long as they're not blocking the right of way.
If you look at the sidewalks around the food vending trucks, the areas, horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, they spill the grease all over the place, and those sidewalks are forever stained now.
Right.
No matter what you do,
Maybe now with Department of Sanitation, maybe those are some of the issues that
you're not gonna clean that up now. Horrible.
Does DSNY also provide the licenses then, or what's the department that provides those licenses?
Great question, Jack, and it would make sense if they did, but they do not. Food vendor licenses are obtained through the Department of Health. And general vending licenses are obtained from the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense now, does it?
Nope.
Doesn't make any sense to me either, but. And this was the problem, that you have multiple agencies that do licensing versus doing enforcement. At one time, that's why DCWP was supposed to umbrella and be the main agency that would coordinate between the police and DOH, NH, and Consumer and Worker Protection. But now sanitation unit is up and running, and it's going to have a computer system that is supposed to have access and training to this information.
Well, we'll see.
Somebody's got to throw out the food.
We'll see.
Okay, is there any? So being that we're losing one, we have a free one.
I think it makes sense to add something here about enforcing illegally towed, illegally parked commercial vehicles.
Yes, Henry brought up a great idea. Additional maintenance for funding for enforcement of the commercial trucks.
Can I, Joe, I have a question on that topic, because I don't really know where this falls in. So there are people who, I don't know, they have basically like big campers or RVs and park them, and just like, there was a guy on Shore Road who was basically living on Shore Road across from Fort Hamilton High School for months and months and months. He just pulled up, parked there, had a giant RV, and was just living there. He just lived there on Shore Road. He was probably getting mail there. He was there so long.
I agree.
And he would basically, I see him every morning when I walk my dog, and he would just, and I'm sitting there like, this is crazy. Like, can you just move to Shore Road and decide to just live on the side of Shore Road as long as you move your car, for an hour once a week on alternate side days? And I'm curious about, I know that we have enough problems, with the commercial vehicles, and I do know that they are trying to take steps to address that, concepts of, certain commercial parking areas. But what about these people who just decide to live somewhere, like on Shore Road, without paying taxes on the street? I like to live on Shore Road.
I am very familiar with Shore Road because we've received that, call from residents about that particular one there. And then there were two at one time on by Diker Beach golf course. There were two, there's now one there. In the case of Shore Road Park, the police have been requested to go out to speak to the individual there, because no, you can't, the rules say you can't park there for that extended period of time. They will not tow with a person in the truck. They can only ask him to move on. The same is true for the one on 86th Street. But the rules do say you cannot do that. But enforcement has been to date either a summons or a request to move on.
Well, I did see actually one morning the police officers, they came and they were speaking with the individual. And he did move on for a few days, but then he came back. So I was just curious about the rules, because that's sort of a weird thing, right? I mean, technically speaking, I guess you're just parking on the street.
There's a specific rule about campers that you can't be on public street within X, amount of time. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if it's a day or, but you can't be parked there. Just like we have a new, but it's enforcement, right? So that's why the police either issue a summons or you move, but they will not tow a vehicle with a person that's living in it, is what, I mean, I understand that.
So then that would fall outside the scope of this, of the commercial overnight parking. Yeah. Okay. I was just concerned. I figured if we could maybe, lump, if it was sort of within the same catch-all, or the same rules were applying, that maybe we could all we could just lump it in because I really don't think it's appropriate to get that trend of just people living in campers on the street going over there outside our parks.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll keep it at commercial vehicles, large commercial vehicles parked on the overnight, specific enforcement personnel. Okay. Anything else? I'm gonna stop my share so I can see everyone. Barbara, you have your hand raised? You're on mute, Barbara.
Okay. So I just looked it up and it says that pedestrian law doesn't allow RVs to park in city spaces for more than 24 hours.
One second, yeah, let's see that.
Oh, good to know.
But then you can move to another space.
But then you can move to another, yeah.
Right, right.
He just moves up to like the next parking spot.
Technically, yes.
I know. Loophole.
And that goes for mobile homes as well.
Thank you.
How does anybody prove that somebody's been there for 24 hours?
You take chalk and you put it on
You
the
take
car.
chalk
and
and
it's
you
on
put
the
it on,
street. I'm sorry, that's the old.
You're actually not allowed to do that anymore.
No.
Okay, so I guess I will tighten up these lists and we will get them out to the full board before the meeting. And then I will task the members here to just, when I send them out, to just take a look at them, make sure I didn't miss anything. And that is all. So I just want to also, before we begin, just to share with the executive committee that over the last 2 weeks, the board has made requests of agencies for participation at committee meetings. So for example, Tracy had, we had spoken about with Jane doing an environmental committee to go over some of the rule changes that were proposed on containerization, as well as the new organics program and its expansion. And we received word back that the Department of Sanitation does not have staff available to attend a PM and evening meeting. We made a request of the SEA to come to report to the board in an education committee meeting. And Barbara, I didn't get to tell you this, but they do not. We could only submit a list of questions, but they do not have staff to come to a PM meeting. We requested a tour of the Owl's Head wastewater treatment plant, and they said they could not accommodate us after hours, even though I said to all of the agency reps that the board is volunteers and they are not available, but only in the PM hours. So I think with budget cuts, we're going to be impacted. We're going to begin to see this, and we'll see how, moving forward. But I just wanted to share that it's been a bit of a challenge scheduling some meetings due to.
Although I do think it was a great idea to have a presentation on the new recycling rules. I think a lot of people would benefit from that. Because some people are not even aware, about the new food waste recycling situation that's going into effect. So that would have been nice idea.
He said to check back with him, and I will, because we've had some mid-sized building tenants who are interested in composting, but want to know how they, can do this. Brooklyn Swab is having a meeting on Thursday. So I've been giving out that information. That's a nonprofit group that's been, kind of a local grassroots and trying to help. But I do think that working with, having someone from sanitation explaining and working with it, what's been successful in other parts of the city is really important. And I do think we should not give up. So I will not give up. Tracy, you have your hand raised?
I was just going to say that the Brooklyn Swab meeting that's this week is also very specifically skewed towards superintendents, because I think there's a certain amount of pushback. That's the impression I'm getting, is there's for the larger buildings. So it's just like it's an educational that's really valuable, or education that's valuable for sure.
So who want to participate, who is there a way to do, I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I'm talking about the smaller buildings, not necessarily even some of the bigger buildings. I guess it is kind of challenging if you have one or two and not the others. I mean,
We had one day at the Dyker Civic Association, we had a sanitation come to our meeting, and the question was asked, how do you store the food wastes until they're collected? And the answer was to put it in your refrigerator or freezer, and then put it out during collection hours.
Yeah.
So they're telling you to store garbage in your refrigerator and freezers until it's picked up.
For each tenant, Sandy, or are they saying the landlord should get a separate refrigerator for this purpose?
Anybody that wants to do it should store it in their freezers or refrigerators, and then when it's picked up, you take it out.
But they give you those brown bins. You can, Josephine sends out the email blast. You can click on it and just get a bin,
Yeah,
which
but
feels.
If you put food waste in that brown bin, if you think the rats are bad now, forget about it.
Now, I was just thinking for people who live in apartments, it's highly impractical because, if you have a house, the brown bins really do latch very tightly. So you can theoretically put it outside, but if you're in an apartment, what are you supposed to do with it? It'll stink to high heaven.
Yes.
I'm in a co-op and we've received absolutely no guidance about how to do any of this from management or from our board.
yeah, so to be continued, for sure.
Aren't buildings exempt? So big large buildings.
There are some buildings who are participating if they've looked at sanitation, but. Okay,
Once it's New York.
Jane, I'll turn it back to you. That's all I have.
Well, Josephine, we have to thank you for preparing all of this and color coding it for us to help make it easier for us to get through all of these different points. And once again, you've helped us to really be organized and to be on top of it. And, really appreciate everyone's participation and comments and thoughtfulness as we move forward on behalf of our community. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And I would like to mention, as I always mention, that I did go to a training session once where they were instructing board members. This was in Manhattan, and they were instructing you on how to prepare these. And Josephine's was put up on the screen as an example because she does it so well for everyone in the city to see. So
That's right. A+.
All right, team. Well, you all have a good night.